This is Caitlin, your host of the NoSleep4Dramas Podcast, where we get no sleep and survive on coffee to watch just one more episode at night. We got something a little different for you this week. Just picture this. It's a Friday night. You get home from work or your workday ends. It's been a really long day, even maybe a long week. And you just want to watch something, but not something that will make you think too hard, or you don't want to start a new show because you know you're not going to be up too late. Not something you need to have to concentrate on 100%. You turn on Netflix and are just scrolling through it, trying to find something to watch. Maybe have a glass of wine and popcorn to wind down. Well, I think I've found the perfect movie for you to click play on that will check all of these boxes. And that is the recently released movie on Netflix called Mission Cross. It's an action comedy that came out on August 9th. And this is my movie review. I think this is kind of just perfect. Like, if you need something that you don't have to think too hard and you're just going to enjoy and it just kills 2 hours, Mission Cross is the perfect movie for you to click play. So, as most of my reviews go, what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce the movie. I'm going to introduce the cast. I'm going to tell you a little synopsis of the movie. And then I'm going to give my general overall review of it. And then afterwards, we're going to go into detail, talk about what I liked and what I disliked about this movie, and then give my overall rating and where you can watch this at the very end. So that is kind of the format. Obviously, for this review, I don't think I'll be doing too many spoilers, but I'm still going to give a spoilers warning when we get past the overall review, just in case I go into detail about anything. So, introduction to this movie. And also, this might be a shorter review because it is a movie and not a drama, so there's only an hour and like 45 minutes to talk about. All right, so what is Mission Cross? Mission Cross is a Korean movie. It came out on August 9th on Netflix. It runs about an hour and 45 minutes. So I'm getting my information from MDL. It's on Netflix. I will read the synopsis that I wrote. I kind of made up my own synopsis, but also went off of what MDL. So I'll read my synopsis and then kind of go into more detail. Because with these synopsis, I kind of don't want to give away like the entire plot. And sometimes those can be quite detailed on MDL. So the one that I wrote is a detective discovers her husband's secret past and the fact that he used to be a special forces officer and go on top secret missions. Together, they investigate a case once that secret is out. So to give more of a context, the husband is played by Hwan Jun-min. And you might recognize him. He hasn't done like too many dramas, but he's done a ton of movies. But you might recognize him from the Korean K-drama Narco Saints, which aired about 2 years ago. And you might know him from, he did a guest role in Kill Bok-soon. That's a Korean movie. You might recognize him from Deliver Us from Evil, which came out in 2020. But he has a long history of movies. The Wailing, which is a pretty famous Korean movie. So he plays the husband, and essentially he is a house husband. He does not work. He runs the household, while his wife, who is a detective, played by Yum Jung-ah. Yum Jung-ah has done quite a few dramas. You might recognize her from Snowdrop or Sky Castle. I recognize her, but I don't think I recognize her from Korean dramas. I think I recognize her from her movies. She's done Alienoid, both movies actually, Steel Rain, Hit and Run Squad. She's done a ton of movies. Like, she's really, she does movies and Korean dramas. I would say the actor who plays the husband, Kwon Jung-min, plays a lot more movies than dramas. But she is the police detective who is the wife, and she one day discovers that her husband is hanging out with a mysterious woman played by Jung Hae-jin, and she decides to investigate because she thinks he is having an affair, and then discovers his secret past of being a special forces officer due to shenanigans that happen, and they eventually investigate a case. So the other players in this cast is, as I mentioned, Jung Hae-jin. It has a pretty prominent role. I mean, we all know her from Stranger, Season 2, Search WWW, Misty, Hit and Run Squad. She was in that movie. Taxi Driver, she had a guest role. Like, she's pretty well-known actress. You would know her. Other people I think you would recognize, Okay Ja-yeon. Okay, Jesus. Can I actually talk? Ok Ja-yeon. You of course would recognize her. Like, she was in The Veil, she's in Mine, Uncanny Encounter. What else? Big Mouth, Young Sun Creature, other things. Il-yang the Wolf Brigade, which is a movie. Age of Shadows, Burning. She had small parts in those, but you would recognize her. She's pretty well known. Kim Joo-hyun played a support role. Again, he's done a ton of things. Dr. Romantic Season 3, Castaway Diva. He's recently in The Tyrant that just aired. Soundtrack number 1, Dr. Brain, It's Okay to Not Be Okay, Designated Survivor. Like, he's done a ton of stuff, including a lot of movies as well. So you would recognize him. Other prominent people. The 3 cops who play like the cop supporting roles. Jung Man-shik has been in a ton of stuff such as Insider, Cafe Minam-dang, The Worst of Evil, Through the Darkness, Undercover. I mean, he's been in a lot of supporting roles. He plays cops a lot of the time, actually, which he does play a cop in this movie as well. Hee-ho Chul, which we just saw in Crash. He was ironically, a cop in Crash. Chief Detective 1958, Like Flowers and Sand, My Dearest, Taxi Driver, yeah. But yeah, those are some prominent people. The 3 main characters, though, are Hwang Jo-min, who plays the husband, Young Jung-ah, who plays the detective wife, and then Jung Hae-jin, who plays, like, this mysterious woman that shows up. Okay, overall, my review of this movie, I have wanted to check this movie out since the trailer came out in June. It looked like a good action comedy movie. This is an action comedy movie. There's a lot of action and there's a lot of comedy. The reason why I kind of wanted to check this movie out is because it looked like a movie that you kind of click play on and you watch for 2 hours, kill some time, and it's like a good time. Like, it's not anything you have to think about. It's not this huge, like, high expectations gonna win all the awards movie. It's just a fun movie you click play on, and I think that lived up to those expectations. I'm not a big movie watcher, but once in a while I'll check out a movie, especially if something catches my attention. And there were some good things about this movie, and then there's other things that I wish were a little different, and we'll go into that when I do my full detailed review of this. But I thought, like, overall, this was a decent movie. Like, you get the best of both worlds. You get comedy and you get action. If you want a comedy movie, you can watch this. If you want an action movie, this will also be satisfying. Like, it's not over the top in either regard. I thought the acting was quite good. The story, like, makes sense, but I'll go into some more details on what I liked about the story and what I didn't, because there's only so much you can put into an hour 45-minute runtime. And that's the other good thing about this movie. It's only an hour 45 minutes long. Like, it's not a 3-hour movie anymore. It's just a good time. And so I would recommend this even before I'm getting into my review of this. But yeah, like, sometimes you just want something that's a little, like, just something you click and watch and then you're done. You can go to bed if you're tired after a work day, or you don't have a lot of time to watch an episode, so you click on a movie instead. Like, this is a good movie that fits that description, and you will feel satisfied after watching this. Plus, I just wanted a little change up on the podcast. Like, I don't watch a lot of movies. I'm trying to get into more movies, so hopefully I can sprinkle in some more movie reviews. And due to this being like really new on Netflix, figured why not? Also, since it's an action movie, that's kind of my type of movie. Comedy, not so much. I'll explain how that like hindered it, but also helped me at the same time. We all know comedy is not my thing. Action, on the other hand, definitely is. Okay, so this is your spoiler warning. We are going into spoiler territory. I wouldn't say I'm going to be talking about every single detail about this story, but I will be saying stuff. So if you do not want to be spoiled on what happens in this movie, please do not listen ahead, because there are some of the synopsis kind of already spoiled it, no matter what, but there's other things that didn't spoil it. So I don't want to spoil the entire movie for you. But obviously the synopsis already said that he used to be a special forces officer, when at the beginning of the movie he just looks like a house husband that cooks and cleans. So that's all I'm saying about this. But this is your spoiler warning. Okay, so if you've listened beyond this point, we are now going into details. So I'm first going to talk about what I liked about this movie. The first thing is obviously the lead couple. I mean, it's their story. They're the entire reason this movie exists, played by Hwang Jae-min and Yeom Jung-ah. I liked them together. They worked well together. I thought when they were on screen together, they worked well. They had good chemistry. They bantered well. The comedy between them was good, because you got the wife, played by Yeom Jung-ah. She's like a badass cop. She kind of has a temper. It doesn't let anybody else walk all over her. She's kind of rough around the edges. She's not like the typical wife you would picture in your mind. She's definitely the wife you would picture if you knew she was a police detective. But he, on the other hand, comes off at the beginning of the show as someone who, say, is a bumbling idiot. It's not like he's an idiot. It's just he takes care of the house. He cleans. He cooks. He doesn't have quote unquote a macho persona. He's kind of more soft and whatever. So they're basically the opposites. You'd think he'd be the cop and she would be the wife. No, not really. So the comedy between them is pretty good, because she is rough around the edges, whatever. And these are two veteran actors and actresses. Their acting is great in this movie. They work well off of each other. It works. The pairing works. The couple is great to see. Other thing that is good about this movie is the action. You want action in a movie, you will get everything in this movie. The action scenes are great. You think of an action movie and you think what usually goes on, what are the tropes of an action movie or even an action K-drama, you will get that all in this movie. You get chase scenes, you get car chases, you get fight scenes, you get shootouts with all sorts of weapons, you get fight scenes with all sorts of weapons. You have an epic ending where the leads are storming into this huge bunker and they're taking down guys left and right, and they're mowing down people running down a hallway with all types of semi-automatics. Every single scene you can think of when it comes to action is in this movie. And it's nonstop action for the most part. Probably a good 3/4 of it is nonstop action. I also think the good cinematography, which I'll talk about in a little later, elevates the action scenes. The action scenes are shot well, especially when there's a sequence of them and they have they're in a small contained area like a hallway or a bunker or something like that. And they're also really fun to watch and were a good addition to this movie, because not only is it a fight scene, sometimes there's comedy sprinkled in, but you also see the leads or whoever's fighting, it's not even just the leads, have good chemistry and work well together. So it adds a fun, entertaining note to this movie with the amount of action scenes. Also, it's entertaining the fact it's not just the men doing the action scenes. The female characters do their fair share as well, which I was not mad about. Okay, so moving on. The comedy. The comedy for me, it was kind of polarizing. Some of the comedy did not work for me at all, which I'll explain below in later part of this episode, but other parts of the comedy were really good and I actually did laugh. I laughed a lot at the lead couple, like their banter and their one-liners, like them together just comedy gold. There's only so much slapstick and physical comedy I tolerate. Like there's a threshold for me in this, and this movie definitely, with some of the characters, mainly the husband, like the house husband, and some of the supporting cast, their slapstick comedy for me was a little excessive, but the couple comedy in this was great. But also the comedy between the police detective wife and her like team of cops, gold. Like really fun, really cool. I'll talk about the side characters in a minute, but their comedy scenes were great. I loved it. The highlight for me though was definitely like this team of cops as well as the couple together. Like there was a lot of comedy in this, more than I thought there would be, that I liked. Because again, as I said, comedy is either a hit or miss for me. So I was going in here in this movie more of like for the action, but the comedy helped. Like the comedy was a good addition to this, because if it was just an action movie, I would still have liked it, but it added sort of another dimension to the movie that allowed us to appreciate the characters in the movie. So I'm glad the comedy was there, especially because it also kind of showed off some of these actors who, like, the main two actors I have never seen done comedy. I don't know if they are good at, like, were good at comedy, whatever. This is the first time I've seen both of them do a comedy role. They pulled it off really well, and I like when I see actors, in my mind, try something new, but I might have just not seen them do a comedy role. Who knows? All I've ever seen these characters do is more serious roles, or like, especially the house husband, Hwang Jung-min. I've seen them done a ton of like ruthless bad guys in movies. So it was funny and kind of, it was weird at first because I did not expect him to do as much comedy as I thought, because I knew the supporting characters were good at comedy. But then once I got used to him doing the comedy, I appreciated it. So there is some comedy. There's a lot of comedy in this. Some worked really well. Moving on. The next thing I liked about it was, as I mentioned, the cinematography. This movie was shot really well. You got some like beautiful landscape shots of both like the city of Seoul in general, but also the nature around Seoul, like the mountains and things. But also, as I said, the action scenes looked really good because they shot the action scenes really well with aerial shots on like the chase scenes or up and close when it comes to the fighting. It was just really, in my mind, the cinematography across the board was really good and kind of elevated those action scenes or just added context to the movie. And I'm always a lover of cinematography. I will appreciate cinematography wherever it is. It's an action comedy movie, so it's not like Oscar winning cinematography. Like, it's not like, it was clear they cared about the cinematography, but not enough where like, this is mind blowing, we're gonna get Oscar. But it came off, they clearly cared about shooting it well. They didn't just point and shoot. So I appreciate that, especially with the action scenes. All right, we have 3 more. As I mentioned, there's 3 side characters. The 3 prominent side characters, her 3 cops on her team, were the best. It was great. I loved watching them. They brought a lot of comedy. They had a great relationship with not only the female lead, their boss, but also her husband. So I just loved seeing them interact together, but also with this couple on screen. They were probably one of my favorite things about this movie. There were 2 like memorable scenes with them that I just had to mention because I was laughing so hard in one of these scenes. So the first one, actually both of these scenes, the first one I was laughing was, and it was kind of like, it was kind of predictable, which I'll talk about later. Like the minute they went into this scene, I was like, oh, I definitely know where this is going. So As I mentioned, Jung Hae-jin plays a woman who comes into the house husband's life, Hwang Jung-min. And the reason why the female lead thinks her husband is possibly having an affair with her is because two of the cops on her team are like investigating a case and happens to come upon her husband, Hwang Jung-min, talking to Jung Hae-jin. And like they're not close enough to hear them, but they watch this entire scene unfold of them talking at this bus station, like waiting for a cab or a bus or whatever. So afterwards, and they like recorded it and everything. So afterwards, they pull the third guy on the cop team. So the three cops I'm talking about, you have Lee Ho Chul, Cha Rae Hyung. These are the two cops that kind of caught them like randomly on the street talking to each other. They go back to the police station and pull Jung Man Shik into an interrogation room and is like freaking out and just like spilling their guts on like how her husband's having an affair. This is the evidence. This is what, and they like act out the entire scene. They like never, like they didn't hear the conversation. So they're just acting us out, assuming like what they said. And obviously we watched the entire scene unfold prior, so we knew what the audience members knew what they said in this scene. So it's super funny because we as audience members know what they said versus what the cops are saying in the interrogation room, and then how it was shot as they showed the scenes side by side with them talking. It's hilarious. It's absolutely, it's comedy gold. Obviously, when they go into the interrogation room, if you have ever seen crime drama, you know, like it's a room with a table and then a glass on one of the walls. And on the other side of the glass, that's usually where the cops are standing watching this interrogation room. So they obviously are in here, and I immediately like, okay, the wife is behind the glass. Like, obviously that's going to happen. And of course she is. So she hears this entire thing. And then she turns on the microphone, and the comedy after that is hilarious because she like is berating all three of them. And so they're like standing in like salute while she's behind this glass where they can't see her. So they're like really close to this glass trying to see it. So funny. It's so funny. And then the other memorable funny scene with the three side characters is near the very end. The female lead calls them and she's trying to like get information because they're all in the police station, and at that time the police stations be raided by the military because the case that they all end up being involved in has to do with this military. So the military is trying to cover up whatever they're trying to discover, so they're there confiscating everything. So these three cops are just like, what the hell is going on? And he gets a call, one of the cops gets a call from the female lead, and the female lead is trying to say like, okay, can you talk? No, you can't talk. What's the situation? He's trying to like relay this information without revealing that he's talking to his boss. And then she's trying to say, okay, who is not there? Can we get a car? So he's trying to like in code telling all this information, and the scenario he thinks up in his head is he's going to be talking to his ex-wife, which all the cops in the station know he hates, and she also hates him. So like for them to have a phone conversation is like out of anybody's, like no one would ever believe that he's on the phone with him, except the military people there have no idea that he is not on good terms with his wife. So he's having this conversation with the female lead on the phone, relaying this information and answering her questions while pretending that she is his ex-wife. And at some point, he like is trying to tell her that one of the cops that are on her team are not at the police station and is at this crime scene. And yes, he has a car, and yes, you can go get it from him. So he has to like pretend that this cop that's not at the police station is like dating his ex-wife, or like she cheated on him with her, something like that, like is in a relationship with his ex-wife. Then at the very end, he like gets off the phone and all the cops in the room are like, what the hell is going on? First off, you're talking to your ex-wife. Second, what do you mean so-and-so is dating your ex-wife? What is going on? Why did he leave his car there? And then, so they end up calling the cop outside of the police station, like, what the heck? Are you dating his wife? What are you talking about? And then he calls the cop outside of the station who has no idea this whole conversation happened, gets this phone call, and then immediately calls the female lead and is like, I'm dating his wife? What is going on? Yeah, I can give you the car. Yes, you can enter the crime scene, but what just happened? It was hilarious. It was so funny because just the facial expressions and just like you could see the guy on the phone, the cop on the phone trying to say something in code. You can see like the gears in his mind turning, trying to think of what to say so he's not revealing that he's talking to his boss. And then the female lead is like, what is he talking about? Like, obviously I'm not his ex-wife. And then she finally realizes that he can't tell her directly. It was hilarious. The scene was so good. Just the facial expressions alone in this scene was worth it. Like, so good. Just comedic gold. And I just love, like, again, these side the three side characters are known to me for their comedy. So I just love that these actors go all in on comedy scenes and like don't shy away from this stuff because it just makes it even more funny because they like are all in and will do anything for the comedy in these scenes. But yeah, so the three side characters, the three cops on our team was some of my favorite parts about this drama or this movie. Okay. Next part, I wrote old concept, but still good. So if you watch this movie, like there's nothing new about this plot. Like I've seen other movies like this. Like you have a married couple, a partner has a secret, the other finds out. So like we've seen this before. Like we've seen like classic I can think of immediately is Mr. and Mrs. Smith. They obviously were married, didn't know they were spies, found out about each other. Or like the one movie with Tom Cruise and Cameron Diaz where she's like dating him and then finds out he's like a spy or was a spy. Like this is not a new plot, but it doesn't mean that it's not fun to watch. Like you have a married couple, the partner has a secret, the other finds out, she finds out that her husband's on like the special forces. She's a badass police officer in her own right, so she's not a damsel in distress or anything. So like in my mind, this is like a mix between Mr. and Mrs. Smith and like Rush Hour. Like that was immediately what I thought of, like the 90s action comedy movie. So if you like that sort of thing, if you like Mr. and Mrs. Smith or you like Rush Hour, I think you will like this. We of course have a main character that's later revealed to be the big bad guy. We have side characters that I just said were the comedic relief. Like nothing about this concept or plot is new. We've seen it in other movies, especially in the last like 20, 30 years. But it's still a fun movie to watch. So I would say go into this movie not expecting like your life is going to be epically changed by it or anything, but it's entertaining and it's a good time. So I basically like, what's the saying? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like it's still an entertaining movie. So old concept, but still good. Lastly, I found it really refreshing to see like older actors and actresses as leads because I loved seeing Hwang Ja-min and Yoon Jung-ah in these roles. Like they worked well together, they had good chemistry, they were both badass characters in their own right, which made them a badass couple altogether. I loved seeing these older characters and an older couple like kick ass on screen and do it well. And actually, as I thought about it, most of this cast is older, on the older side compared to like what you are seeing nowadays in terms of like K-drama casts. Like I don't think anybody in this cast is younger than 30 and most of them are like mid to high 30s and up, which I found really refreshing. I thought it was fun seeing all of these older actors and actresses who might be in these roles like pigeonholed into these roles as like a divorcee or a wife or a mother or whatever. for them to be pulling off some fun comedy and some action scenes and do it well, it was really refreshing and I liked watching it. Okay, so this might be a shorter episode overall because, again, we are reviewing a movie. What could have been better about this movie? So, as I said, some of the comedy worked for me, but other parts did not work for me. And it really just depends on what type of humor you have. Like, I have a very weird sense of humor. I would say I have a drier humor, like British humor, I find funny. I do not do well with slapstick or bathroom humor. I've never done well with that. And so while this movie had some great comedy that I did love, and I actually did like some of the slapstick, it did have some bathroom humor, which I did not like whatsoever. I didn't find it funny. I think other people will. I think it was just me. I knew that comedy would not work for me. And then also some of the slapstick were kind of just meh. It was like over the top, or I just didn't find it funny. Other parts of the slapstick humor, though, I loved. It just depended on the situation, the scene, what was going on. So the movie has both of these comedies. I think if you enjoy comedic things overall, you will find something funny in this movie. Maybe all of it, especially if you like everything. But just some of these jokes, especially the bathroom humor, is not my cup of tea. I did not find it funny. So that was a little bit of a negative for me. I just could have done without like the bathroom humor and some of the slapstick humor. I wanted to see the couple work together more. So because I enjoyed the older couple working together and like having scenes together, a lot of this movie is like the main couple is apart, like they're not together. Because you have like at the beginning, she has a job, he's house husband. So they obviously aren't together during the day. And she's also a cop, so she kind of like runs out of the room or runs out of the house a lot of the time because she gets a call. And then she finds out that he's hanging out with this mysterious woman. So he's off hanging out with the mysterious woman doing whatever. I'm not going to reveal what that is because that's a huge plot point. So he's off with this mysterious woman for a good chunk of the movie. His wife is tailing him because she thinks he's having an affair, so she wants proof, but they're still apart. They're like not working together. And then at the very end, they team up and then they become this badass action kick-ass couple. I wanted more of that couple. I wanted them to like investigate this case more together versus separately, because at the very end, they kind of know everything, so they don't even do a lot of investigation. They kind of just, oh, we have to go get the bad guy now. And so they have this epic action scene at the end getting the bad guy. So I wish they had more scenes together, especially like investigating together, especially because she found out he was a special forces officer and I just wanted them to team up for longer. Also, speaking of her finding out that he's a special forces officer, one, that happened really like long into the movie, like a lot later in the movie than I thought it would. They also never really had a discussion on it. She basically finds out he's a special forces officer because he has to save her from being like killed because she gets like kidnapped and like tortured for information. So he drives a truck through a wall and starts shooting people. And she obviously thinks he's a house husband. So she had no idea he could even like look at a gun. And so he rescues her and they kind of escape to like recollect and get weapons and storm the bunker again, but they don't really have a conversation about the fact she just found out what he did for a living before like 10 years ago or something, maybe 5 years ago. They never really had that conversation. It kind of just happened. So I wish they had that conversation because one, I think it would be a great comedic scene. But two, I feel like you need to have that conversation instead of just like storming the castle right after. So the pacing was a little off in this movie, just because she found out way later than I thought, and there was a lot of conversations that needed to happen that didn't happen. So, but yeah, for the most part though, I enjoyed them together so much. I wish they worked together more. Okay, so speaking of the fact that like they didn't have that conversation about her husband's previous life, the other thing I kind of didn't like, and I do understand that this is only an hour and 40 minutes long, hour and 45 minutes long. I don't think really anything in the story is like you go into depth about anything. Like maybe it's because they only had less than 2 hours, but like I feel like they just threw story at us, but never gave context or never explained it above or below surface level. So we got at the beginning, or like maybe close to the beginning, we got a really surface level reason on why the husband left his secret job. And then we got a surface level montage of him getting back into his secret job life and investigating this case. But they never really went into much depth about the investigation. They also introduced a crime having to do with the military, but also never really went into depth about that. Everything was kind of just like surface level and enough explanation where you would still enjoy the movie, but you didn't have to think too hard because there wasn't a lot to think about. So if you're looking for a movie where you really don't have to think about and you kind of just have to watch and you don't really care if it connects or makes 100% sense, perfect movie to watch. Like if you're I'm the kind of person though where I'm constantly watching stuff and I'm like, okay, what? I need more explanation on this, or I need context, or especially if it's like a crime drama or a crime show. I'm like, okay, I need evidence. In a hour and 40-minute long movie, I enjoyed it because I basically decided I was going to turn my brain off. But if I was trying to watch this as like an analytical person, like I usually do with a crime drama, it would drive me nuts because they would just be telling you stuff but not giving evidence about it and also not really showing it. So the other thing that I didn't like, and maybe it's just like a time thing, is they would just say something about the case and then you'd have to like accept it as fact because they like tell you things instead of actually doing it on screen. And obviously that was to save time. They weren't gonna like have to go shoot that scene for like a thing they could say in 2 sentences, but still, it just don't expect this to be a movie that goes into great detail or depth about anything. Like it's not groundbreaking or mind-blowing or anything, but again, not every movie needs to be. So if you just need something to turn your brain off and watch for 2 hours, this is the perfect movie for you. Another thing I wish was better, it was a little predictable. I mean, if you've seen an action comedy movie in the last 20 years, you'll know what's in this movie. Like, a predictable person turns out to be the bad guy. We have a saving scene. We have action sequences. We have banter and comedy. It's like if you think of every action and comedy trope from the last 20 years, it's in this movie. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just like don't go into this movie thinking it's going to introduce anything new. And then also, will say, even though it seemed really short, like the movie went by pretty fast, it did drag for me in some parts. And I think it's because I wanted more screen time with the lead couple together and working together. And because they weren't together, it dragged a bit. And maybe it was also because like so much of the story did not go into much depth and I wanted context about things, or I wanted more depth in the story points. But because it was all surface level, it just seemed slow or that nothing was going on because they said something happened in 2 sentences versus actually doing it on screen. So, and then the pacing also, I think, led to this. Like everything seemed to happen at the very end of the movie. We obviously as I said, we got a huge action sequence at the end of the movie, which made up for the quote unquote slowness of the parts I thought before that. But that also meant that I thought like everything about this movie that had any importance happened at the like nearly the very end, like the last third of this movie. So I think the pacing was a little off, but again, if you kind of turn your brain off and you just watch it, it's not the end of the world at the same time. So that is my review of Mission Cross. It's on Netflix. I know this is a shorter episode, but I thought change it up, do a movie review. My rating for this was an 8 out of 10. It was a good movie. Like, I was entertained. It's not mind-blowing or anything, but it was entertaining and kind of something you turn on and you appreciate and then you turn off. Like, it was a good movie. So yeah, I also kind of wanted to do this review just to like tell you guys about it and say like, hey, it's there if you want to check it out. It's a solid action comedy movie. But yeah, 8 out of 10. It's on Netflix. Korean drama, Mission Cross. If you watch this movie, let me know what you think. Have you watched this movie already, though? If you have, please let me know what you think of my review, or let me know what you think of the movie. Let me know if you want more movie reviews. I don't watch a ton of movies, but when I do, I will do a movie review. Because there's obviously, even though I don't watch a ton of movies, there's always like movies on my list I want to watch. Let me know if you want me to do more movie reviews, but that's pretty much it. That's my review of Mission Cross. And I hope you kind of enjoyed this change up, and I hope you enjoyed this review. Thank you. Bye. If you want to continue the conversations about dramas that were started in this episode, you can find me on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter under the username NoSleep4Dramas. That is no sleep, the number 4 dramas, just like in the title of the podcast. This podcast is also an expansion of my blog, so you can visit my blog at www.NoSleep4Dramas.com, the number 4 dramas.com, and find multiple years of blog posts already available at your fingertips. All links are in the description of this episode. This has been an episode of the No Sleep for Dramas podcast, and I am your host, Caitlin. I will see you here next time, and I hope you get no sleep chasing the next episode just like me. Good night.